think that's a really silly thing to say. Thank you, Tuna. Um, what is? Oh, okay. I was like, what does that mean? Like you're not in like a position of like good moral standing because you're dating Stardust. I get it now. It all just sort of came together for me. Yeah, yeah. That makes perfect sense to say. Yes, I very much do. Um, yeah, you're the first person that I have ever heard would that I believed when they said it, say that they are a free speech absolutist. Oh.
Like a defense. Like if you've got free speech, you're defended from everything. I don't view free speech in that way. I view it as freedom of speech is the right to say what you think and what you feel. It's not freedom from consequences for speaking and saying what you think and feel.
Sure. Um, so maybe you can explain what that is to me because I think that from everybody that I've talked to, I've sort of developed the my own personal understanding of free speech is that I think that people can say whatever they want to the point to where what you're doing is saying things like is to where you're expressing yourself. But you can use speech to do things that are not exercising free speech. Does that make sense?
To an extent. I
Like I can
think,
drive my
okay,
car. I have the right to drive a car. I have a license and all that.
sure.
But if I use my car to run people over, I'm not. I wouldn't say I went for a drive.
I can understand that perspective. So the way I'd put it is this: people do or should have the right to say pretty much whatever they like.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm super interested in that pretty much.
yeah, there are okay, we'll get to the nuance of that. But the way a lot of people talk about it is once you have that right to say whatever you want, so you have freedom from consequences. Like I say this thing and you can't judge me for it. That's not how this works. People
Hmm.
also have the right to exercise their own freedoms. So what's a good way to put this? So let's say somebody says something bigoted. Uh, they shouldn't be criminally prosecuted or cut off from society through a state system for doing that. But if people are like, okay, well, we don't want to do business with you, or you're fired, or we don't want to associate with you, that's also their right. Freedom of speech does not make it protected speech in some way. Um, the limitations on freedom of speech are when you are not speaking just for yourself, when you are basically weaponizing speech, but that has to be really fucking specific. So if you're at the point where you're like, right, okay, cool, I have a large group that's going to listen to me, and I have a platform at which to exercise my speech in a way that's going to direct violence. Um, you, and that's a form of weaponized speech. It doesn't become free anymore because it's essentially the ability for somebody to actually weaponize things. But the scale, in my opinion, for that is of actual harm, provable harm is going to come from it, is going to be caused by it.
Yeah, I
That
would
has
say
to
that
be a
you're
very
not
high
just
standard.
speaking anymore. You're using words to designate action. That is something that is separate from what we just say, would just say is like your freedom to say what you want. Like, because like if I tell somebody to shoot you, I'm just saying words. I have freedom of speech. If I tell somebody to shoot you, and they have the gun, and like they're under my employ. Like I don't think my freedom of speech covers that.
I think um, I think partly it depends whether they actually shoot me.
Uh, yeah.
I
Or
think I
what if
think
there's a
you I think
reasonable
you I think
expectation that they
you
would?
well, even with a reasonable expectation, because that's a very slippery slope. So it's more unfortunately after the fact. Like we don't let's go way to put this. We don't have something like the Minority Report where we go, well, there is a reasonably good chance this person's going to murder someone, so we arrest them.
I think we'd
We
say that
don't
there was an
say,
attempt.
yeah, but there's a difference between like an actual attempt being made and kind of like the assertion that something may happen or even has a very high probability until a physical action is taken, until there is a consequence. Now, again, there are limits to that, right? Like if you're like, well, okay, you can already see the starting points. If you're speaking to a mob, for example, that already has a history of violence, and you're like, well, okay, that's a different situation. But if you're just talking generally,
Oh yeah, I was talking about like
because
my armed guard.
yeah, so the reason it's become slippery is because on all sides you're like, okay, so let's take Elizabeth Warren, for example. On the left. When the stuff happened with Roe versus Wade, Elizabeth Warren was outside the Supreme Court, basically making calls to action that could be read as a call to violence.
Hmm.
Now, do we prosecute and arrest Elizabeth Warren, who is a figure in authority talking to a large mob of people that they need to take potentially violent actions on the reasonable expectation that that could lead to something? There have been other cases where I think it's a Sanders supporter was accused of firing into a stadium at Republicans. There's like reasonable history and expectation there. I don't think we do. And I also think the way those kind of assumptions are placed, at least in the media and the conversation, favor attacking right wing individuals. The reason I'm very much against that as a position is because when you do stuff like that, at base, um, you're creating precedents that will be used against you. And we see this over and over again. Like what works, people want to make laws and rules and regulations that benefit them at the time. But once a power has been given, it's very hard to remove.
Uh, yeah, I agree. Cause I just said this yesterday on stream too. Laws don't exist to give you the ability to do something. Laws exist to take away your freedoms. That's what laws do. Like the United States Bill of Rights are things that the government's not allowed to make laws about. Like they're saying like you can't make a law that says you can't do this. It's like a law. It's like the law for the government. So it's saying the government can't do these things, which are all things that they can't take
Sure,
away.
sure. It's a social contract between the people and the federal government.
Yeah. Um. But I. So you, when you say that there's I guess I just want to make sure that I understand this. When you're saying like there's not freedom from consequence, like I don't think anybody believes that there is freedom from consequence. Like it's like inherent. Everything that happens is going to have some kind of consequential action. But I think what you're alluding to is like political correctness movement. Yeah.
Yeah, to an extent. It's let's go with put
Movement
this.
value. I've had people describe this to me in different ways. I think describing it as a value is probably the most interesting one, because if it's a value, it sort of sprang up two different times in my lifetime, and it faded out once pretty heavily, and then it came back. So
Sure.
I it
I think it's okay. So the way I put it is this: you have the right as an individual to attempt to use speech in a way that may cancel somebody.
mhm.
The government and the state does not have the right to criminalize that speech. Like you can take social consequences as a group and say, well, this person's a bigoted asshole, um, and we don't want to associate with them. They we don't want this company to associate with them, and we don't want to associate with this company. You have the right to um, apply that pressure. In the same way, people have the right to no longer buy that company's goods or take political sides. These aren't like good outcomes, by the way. It's just that they are part and parcel of the outcomes. The problem comes in when you go, okay, well, what you're saying is criminal. What you're saying is something that we need to arrest you for. We need to take everything away from you with no recourse. Um, there are a couple of reasons that this is just a bad fucking route to go down. And actually, in microcosm, even on the social side, it's not great. You only have to look at what's happening in Twitch poll as just like a kind of the circles we move in to see what's happened with no right wingers because the left just cannibalizes itself. Like everyone's
Pretty
looking
bad.
for like a Nazi, right?
Uh,
Um,
yeah. Well, the bar has become pretty low to qualify because of that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because look, groups need enemies, and also like you're not convincing people by stopping them speaking. You're just stopping them speaking. You also lose the ability to ever understand how to have that conversation again in the future.
W-
Like so many people will go and debate people like Nick Fuentes and not really understand what the fuck Nick Fuentes believes because the only thing that they've been told about Nick Fuentes is what's being presented to them by other people on the left. So they'll go to Nick Fuentes and have conversations that just don't work against him or his audience. And like again, it's not about like winning and converting anyone. It's just about not looking like an idiot. Um, and that's happened a lot to a lot of people, not just against Fuentes, but a lot of this happened for a lot of feminists against sort of like the anti-SJW crowd. Um, and again, that community, like people like Sargon things, didn't get taken down by feminists. Milo didn't get taken down by the left. They got taken down by the
Yeah.
right. They got taken down by people in their own spheres who weren't happy with what they were doing or wanted to get rid of them or wanted to get them out of the way or wanted to actually steal their communities. And in large part, that fucking worked. So, I think that those are good principles. I think part of the problem as well when talking about freedom of speech is a lot of people view it as I should have the right to be bigoted. You can shut the fuck up. And it's like, well, it's other people's freedoms to tell you to fuck off, basically.
Yeah. And something that you said too, I think is really important. That I just want to go over. I talked to somebody 2 or 3 days ago, and they brought up the really good point is that if you cast out all the people that meet this like lower bare minimum qualifier for what we could put into the box of Nazi, which most people that we call Nazis are far from it, but the only people that they have left to talk to are people who are just as much or more of a Nazi than them. So I think that's how you end up radicalizing people too.
Yeah, well, people will, if you stop having conversations with people don't just stop having conversations. They,
Yeah,
they
they're
go and
gonna
talk
go
to
where they're
somebody else.
welcome.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what spurred this idea for me is that when I first started to understand the idea of political correctness, just sort of like the most basic understanding, well over 10 years ago, the idea is that we're going to trade some of our, well, it's implied that you'll trade some of your freedom. You're going to watch what you say in order to make the world a better place. And I kind of wonder if there's a lot of unintended harm happening,
Do you
that
think the world's
we
a
need
better
to,
place
uh,
than it
in
was 10 years
some,
ago?
in some ways, in some ways, it's worse. And it's tough. It's a tough equation for me to balance out because I know that we've come a long way in supporting people that have traditionally had no voice, or if they did have a voice, it would be if an opposing voice came up to it, it would just get silenced really really easily. But I think that in trying to balance things out, we may have given up a lot, and when we give up a lot, there's going to be people who are on the other end of it now, and nobody cares. They basically just say, "Well, you had your run. It's somebody else's turn to have a run." But I don't think that's how you. That doesn't feel moral to me at all. I think the idea should be that people should be sort of the same no matter what. And I feel like some people. I think there's a lot of people who feel like they can't say uh, what's on their mind. I think there's some people that say that and it's bullshit. They just want to be hateful pieces of shit and have nobody complain to them, or like they want to avoid the consequences. But I do think that there's people that kind of are freaked out about it. And like for good reasons too. I think that like there's people that are afraid to make a joke about somebody. I think that there's some people that like because it I don't think that it's hyperbole to say that it's hard to tell what's going to offend people because it changes. I could tell you a joke right now that's totally fine, and in 5 years from now, it's totally way out of line. Um, and when I was younger, I legitimately, in my little tiny rural area where I didn't interact with almost anybody, I didn't really think like uh, seriously racist people still existed like in the world. Like it was just like super fringe thing. They were all really old and like dying out because I just never seen it. So I just thought like we're pretty much past it. I was just like, we just got to wait for these people to die. There's not going to be anybody my age that's like that. And I was wrong, obviously. Um, so I think I had a really weird perspective on like uh, what was and
The
wasn't
ideas
okay.
didn't the ideas didn't go away. That we just stopped hearing them, and then they grew. Like unfortunately, that was just the reality. Um, and look, people are always going to look. There is always going to be outliers. There's always going to be people who are, I don't know, have a different ideological viewpoint to us. I hear a lot of people talk about this idea of like, well, those people are lost. We're in a war. Like, fuck them. Like, we can't do anymore. Like, we need to fight. And fuck.
That freaks me out. See,
I
that makes
yeah.
me feel like it's not making the world a better place. When if the goal is to make people feel more safe, more secured, more protected, and more equal, uh, I don't think that I
Do
feel
you
like there
think?
should be a
Do you
war of
think?
ideas, but people are making it more or less a war of violence when you take somebody when you if somebody does something on the if somebody does something on the internet 5 years ago and you find out where they work and you call their job so that you can hurt them even though you don't know them or know anybody that knows them, this is a war of violence.
Do you think that buying the new Harry Potter game is a hate crime?
No, no. I typically do vote with my dollar, but oh my god, I wasn't prepared to say that. No, that's a very very silly thing to say.
But there are people who think that, right?
I have to take your word for it. I know there's people that like won't and they think that it's fucked up if you do. But I guess hearing it in that terminology makes me
Well, there are people writing comments right now saying if you buy this game, you are posing a direct risk and danger to my existence.
um
Which is what we'd say about a hate crime, right?
I suppose so, yeah. I think that's delusional.
So do I. But
Um
these people exist, and they're look. I said this about fuck. I did a whole fucking conversation on feminism, and now I'm going to talk about it again. One of the biggest downsides about feminism
mhm.
is it's made women feel more afraid. Statistically, women are safer than they've ever been, but women's level of fear about the world around them is far fucking higher than it used to be.
Sure.
And that's because like this is just it's a couple of things. It's rule of large numbers, but it's also highlighting risk in a way that feels very personal. And this isn't new. This isn't unique to feminism, by the way. It's not like some particular evil or anything. Like you can see this with people's belief that there's a terrorist threat. often people's belief that there's a terrorist threat is entirely based on media attention. It's
Sure.
really disconnected from actual terrorist activity. Because if you just constantly go, this thing is a threat, people go, fuck, I'm in danger. Like it's like the Ralph meme on the fucking bus. I'm in danger. Because that's how people feel. That's how people react. Like we're sort of designed. I say designed because I'm religious, but we're like, let's say we've evolved to have kind of an interaction with the world around us that's incredibly close knit. Like we're a tribal animal, so like we're really not very good at coping with things like social media, with news, especially 24-hour news. And now everything feels more personal. It's more immediate. It's outside your door. These people are on your doorstep. I'm doing a video essay on Tim Pool, and Tim's Pool shit is like, these people are coming for you. They are criminalizing your right to defend yourself. They are raising the price of ammunition. You are in danger. And that rhetoric isn't just from people like Tim Pool, it's from fucking all over.
Yeah.
And these things become self-fulfilling prophecies. And that's like an actual concern.
Well, and not only that too, people who do things like that too, they take something that's actually happening and then they add a narrative onto it to where it just sounds like the whole thing, because you can, if like if Kmart, this happened a long time ago, Kmart started locking up their shells for shells and bullets, and they stopped selling like a wide variety of guns, and they like limited the number of them. This, and then like they put it next to like all these other things that were being changed in like a bunch of different stores. These things are all happening, but it doesn't mean it's like a concerted effort. But when you say that, and then you say like people are trying to take away your right to defend yourself as well, you go, well, I guess this logically follows. Yeah, I think that people like that can be pretty scary because they can lie to you with the truth very well.
Well, I mean, okay. So one thing I've always said about both the far left and the far right is that fundamentally, the far left and the far right do they have an A-B process, and the A is basically the same for both the far left and the far right. The A is there is something wrong with the world around you, and you know there's something wrong with the world around you, and I'm going to tell you what it is. And it's actually quite often really similar things, and it's become more similar over time. But the B is different. So for the right, the B is a really specific thing. It's always a specific thing. It's either the problem is immigration, the problem is immigration, the problem is like LGBT people, the problem is whatever.
Problem
like
is different.
you need an ethno state. Like that kind of shit. But on the left, the B is different. The B is everything is wrong. The system is wrong. The men are wrong. Bigots are wrong. Everything around you, and it's all at once. And it's why the right is really focused on singular problems. It's also why the right tends to be, especially in the online world, more successful in campaigning. Like for specific things, they disseminate an idea very well. But the left is very good at a multitude of things, but tends to peter out on the edges, and end up with more, at least it's a lot easier for the media to pick up the cringier parts of the left, but also the left has no true goal. Like the right tends to point at things and go, if we can do this one thing, we're sorted. Like things are fine. You just need to support us doing this one thing, and you're done. On the left, it's like you need to do these 100,000 things because we need to, yeah. And there's also no endpoint. There's no such thing as too left wing. And yeah, those are quite. Just to respond to a comment, not so successful on the immigration front. I disagree with you. I think the right's been very successful in immigration. Brexit's a good example of this. You only have to look at the effects on the border in the United States, despite the fact that most illegal immigration in the US does not come from the border. The right's
Comes from
really good at
airplanes.
weaponizing fear. Yeah, the left's good at weaponizing fear as well. Everyone is. I mean, this isn't unique. These are this is real belief that the left fundamentally has different tactics, but these aren't left wing or right wing tactics. They're just political tactics, and they have been effective for thousands of years. When Saint Augustine wrote City of God against the pagans, he didn't write a book going, "Hey, God is really nice and lovely, and we like pagans, but they're wrong." And he wrote a book saying pagans destroyed Rome. Pagans are the reason that Rome has fallen, and I'm going to prove it to you. Saint Augustine was the Ben Shapiro of his day. He was like, no, 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 no. We need to worship God, and we need to get rid of the pagans because they're going to get all of us killed and sent to hell. We are fucked if we listen to the pagans. You must rise up. In fact, Christians aren't allowed to fight, but I'm going to tell you why. I've got this little thing called just war theory, which means that you as a Christian can join the army, and maybe you want to go take care of a few pagans. This stuff's been happening for thousands of years. It's not new. It's just the same thing, different face.
I mean, in all fairness, the Ostrogoths were pagan, so and they delivered the most successful attack on Rome, surprise attack on Rome in like history. It's a very, very, very niche history specific joke. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. I mean, when we say pagan in those terms,
Pagan just means non-Christian.
Yeah, I'd say so. Roman religion, specifically, it's actually like so. Pagan is a word. Fuck. I mean, we're gonna get into semantics, but yeah,
Right.
Everything became pagan.
Yeah.
After Christians made everything pagan, basically. It's a good way to put it. But yeah, like it's difficult because I think a lot of people want a simple answer for the problems in the world. There just isn't one. But targeting what people fear, fuck, that's just easy political wins, and everyone does that.
I think it freaks me out how bad people want to hurt other people. And like I think I came to this conclusion with the last person I talked about this. I think it's disordered. I think society is heavily disordered in their values and their morals. So um, when somebody does something that's like socially inappropriate, if they call somebody, let's say somebody calls a minority a slur, this is bad. And it's bad because it hurts somebody, right? We agree on this?
Sorry, say that last bit again.
Like I think like the most common instance we would see of political correctness is like somebody calls somebody a slur or says a bigoted joke. And the reason why we see this as bad is because it hurts somebody. We agree with this, right?
I would argue that's the reason. I don't think that's why we see it as bad.
Oh, I think that well, people might not necessarily take that route. I think like that's the intuitive like feeling that they have that they understand. Like
I think that's the argument. I don't
somebody.
think that's how people actually react.
Oh well, I agree because we don't. And then if somebody were to support that person, we would just like society sort of groups them in with that person, says like, oh, okay, like you're just we can basically hold you accountable as well. Yeah,
I think
but
it's very
if
tribal.
somebody,
I think a lot of it is. I think this is why virtue signaling is a phrase and a thing. I think a lot of political correctness is performative because it shows you're part of the in-group. So
yeah,
it's this thing of I agree with you on this, but most people don't care about the actual harm, and you can see this from like a lot of people who will talk about, oh well, we need to protect the working class. We need to protect the working class. The working class are under attack. But then the minute they meet anybody from the working class, they fucking hate those people, and they'll come up with a million reasons why they're not really the working class.
yeah,
Like
are
you'll
they
hear these
really
fucking
though?
arguments. Yeah, are the Confederacy like people with Confederate flags? I don't think they're working class. People who drive trucks aren't the working class. People who they're part of the lower middle class. They're basically bourgeoisie. Like
I have never seen anybody with a Confederate flag sticker on their truck that went to work in a suit and tie in my life.
but this is how people view things, and like
we don't treat
I mean, this is
murderers this way.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I say this in the Tim Pool video actually, because while talking about Pool, but um, I'm just gonna slightly plug my own shit in some way, but like Pool's interesting because like when he did Occupy, he wasn't popular. And I think Paul had a moment where, he thought that this was the thing that was, he'd finally be cool. Everyone would like him. He was bringing truth to the people, all that kind of shit. He was a journalist. He was out there bringing the eyes, bringing the attention. But there's a really uncomfortable thing. A lot of people in activism, charity work, politics have to deal with. It's when they actually meet the base that they champion. And the truth is that whether we're talking about the French Revolution and the Parisians, the Jacobins going to the French peasantry outside Paris and finding out actually they quite liked the king they're just been decapitated, or whether it's like a fucking working class person who just fucking hates socialism, a lot of people have to like encounter this thing where they're like, well, the people I'm championing fucking hate me and they hate what I stand for. And there's a wonderful clip from Yes Prime Minister where basically Humphrey, who's a civil servant, has to meet this sort of like local council leader who's like a like serious Marxist, and they're talking about plans, and like the Prime Minister has a plan that will basically remove party systems. And she's like, "This is awful." He's like, "You agree?" And she's like, "Of course. How would we get people to support our ideas and things?" And he's like, "Well, if people are more politically engaged, wouldn't they vote for you?" And she's like, "No, of course not. The average man doesn't understand what he needs. That's why he needs people like us. Of course he'd vote for us if he understood." But he can't understand. He's not, and lots of people think like that. They're like, well, all these fucking black conservatives, they'd vote for us if they really understood, but they've been taken in by the establishment. Black police officers have been brainwashed by white supremacy. And it's like, honestly, fuck you guys at that point. Like, fuck off. It's just like, if you, there's another thing I say constantly. I
I
I
think there's a
meet a
grain of
lot of
truth.
I meet a lot of atheists who are really fucking critical of Christianity. They hate Christianity. They hate everything about it. But they'll say nothing bad about Islam. They're like, no, 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 Muslims are an oppressed minority. And I'm like, okay, like you can argue that like people from the Middle East, perhaps, for example, are oppressed. But Muslims, like you hate Christianity, you hate the belief in God, you're an atheist. Yeah, but they just don't fully understand. It's part of their culture. And what they're really saying is these people are too simple to understand that God doesn't exist. They live in a fucking desert, in a fucking mud hut or some shit. And I'm just like, you're a fucking racist. You're a racist. If you think that you cannot criticize Muslims from the Middle East because they are too simple to understand that their God doesn't exist, you're a fucking racist.
Now, I
It
used to
is
do
that
that,
simple.
but I used to do that when I was young and like angry atheist. I would support Islam, but I never did it in that way. I would just always make pro-Islam arguments so that way Christians could make that way they could argue against their own points.
Yeah, I think it's so
I
it's an
liked that.
interesting it's an interesting one because again, most people, well, frankly, most Christians don't understand their own fucking religion, let alone, most people don't.
True.
Not just
I
Christians, like most Muslims don't really understand their own religion, and though that's a lot easier to do with Islam because it's so fractured and has no true top-down structure. Um, but most Christians don't understand what they believe. There are Christians who believe that Christ didn't ascend or some shit, and like you're just like, well, you're not a Christian then. You're like, at best, you're a Jew that hasn't converted to Judaism.
these
Like,
these religions all came from Judaism, which is like one of the most eclectic religions in the entire like history of the world. So like you can't blame them for being all over the place. We
I
just
mean,
we
what
just
I'd say
don't
is this: like, when I did my theology degree,
you have a degree in
um,
theology?
I do have a degree in
When I was
theology.
in high
I
school, I wanted
specialized
to
in.
be a theologian, but I realized that it's very hard to make money.
It is. I mean, there's an old joke of theology is a way for priests who've lost their faith to still draw their stipend, but you have to be a priest first, basically. Um, But yeah, when I did my theology degree at the start of the course, most people were Christian, and the vast majority, had a couple of Jewish students. But by the end, basically all the Christians had lost their faith in God after 3 years of studying theology.
Incredible.
Because
I wasn't even religious when I wanted to
well,
do it.
when you dive into like theology, when you dive into like real comparative
Yeah.
theology, and you're looking at the history of religions, you're like, wow, this is fucking nonsense. It's really hard to defend because you're just like, well, this isn't even really Christianity, it's Augustinism. It's all additional text that's been wrapped in. It's why when people just read scripture, they get a really weird idea of what Christianity is. And you can see this in China actually. There's a really interesting juxtaposition between Western Buddhists and Chinese Christians, in that both have really similar sort of historical understandings of the other religion. You'll quite often hear Western Christians say things like, well, I love Buddhism because Buddhism's a religion of peace when nothing bad has ever happened. And it's so peaceful. Look at this text. Look at it. It's so peaceful. It's so lovely. And I'm like, have you read Christianity? Most of Christianity is like this. It's really peaceful. It's really lovely. It's just caused a lot of wars. And so has Buddhism. That's just the fucking reality, because
they both
religion
hate
isn't
women.
bad. Humans are bad. Humans do bad things. They use religion as an excuse. And actually, it's interesting you say that. Do you know the reason that Christianity spread so quickly?
I maybe it depends on what you mean.
Well, I mean, in
like
the ancient
where?
world. In the ancient world, through Rome, through like the empire.
Well, I understand there's things people say, but I just believe that it was enforced for starters. And if you tell somebody to believe something and the penalty's that high, you're gonna teach your kids that it's real, and it won't be questioned. And then when they have kids, they will think that it's real and teach them that. Once their parents or their grandparents die, you just have nobody that knows that they were forced into it. So that's what I think happened. But it was like the political power of like everything then.
It wasn't at all. It's most religions aren't. So, with the exception of in the major religions, with the exception of Islam, which is kind of a religion that then built a state, most states just adopt a religion. And they usually adopt a religion because it's already very popular and because it's got good social values or it's good for cohesion. Christianity spread so quickly because of women. And this isn't unique to Christianity. A lot of religions do. Most throughout history, women tend to set the beliefs of a household. So the reason Christianity spread so quickly and so well is in comparison to paganism, Judaism, multiple other religions at the time. It's very progressive. In other religions, the man is responsible for everything. A woman is an extension. But in Christianity, a woman is responsible for herself and her own sins. And women were people too. It's one of the reasons Christianity throughout like settling periods was so popular, because women had weird amounts of equal status in comparison to other religions. Like just based in the scripture. And it's why women spread it so quickly.
But I mean, I get maybe it was less misogynistic than other religions that were around.
Oh,
Certainly less so
it's
than
not
Judaism.
feminist by by today's standards, but like, and it again depends on the period of Judaism. I think it's Ruth Ros something or other. I'd have to look her up, but she's a feminist theologian. Argued that actually like around like 3,000 years ago, Judaism had a female deity as well as a male one that just got wiped out over time. So it depends on the outlook, but yeah, like in comparison to
you
like
just have somebody read Deuteronomy.
Well, I mean, like I think the biggest thing for like Christianity spread through the empire is in comparison to like women's status within sort of pagan Rome, it's just a lot better. Women had a lot more control and a lot more power, but those things are, I don't know, what's a good way to put them?
I guess, but
interesting from the extent of like how we view those religions now.
well, like you said, too, people don't really understand them, anyways. Most Christians haven't read the Bible.
Well, most Christians shouldn't need to.
Uh,
Because most of the time, like again, most of like for religious history, like most people never read their religious texts, historically speaking. It's oral tradition is what passes things on.
okay, that's that's a very satisfying answer. Then I was ready to argue when you said that they shouldn't have to. I I didn't know that you were so well versed in theology. I think that I really want to say something about it, but like I don't want to get too wrapped up in it because I really want to get a good understanding of your free speech stuff. But it's like one of my favorite subjects
Sure.
that I never get to talk about. I've
We
studied
we
religion
can
since I was
we
like
can engage
13
in
years
this. Like
old.
I'm really happy to engage in kind of religious conversations and things. I'm not a Christian either. I just
I'm
know
not
all about
either.
it. So
I
so
have a like I said, I've literally studied religion since like so like over 20 years I've studied religion. It's just sort of been like a really big like hobby, passion, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it's been a passion, sometimes it's been a hobby, just depending on where I'm at in my life. But I have a my main theory about the validity of the Bible is that it either has to be like the only way that the Bible could ever possibly be the thing that people think that it is, that Christians think that it is. It would have to be that anybody who has picked it up could open it and read what it couldn't be literal. You would have to be able to pick it up and read any part of it, and you would receive exactly what God intended for specifically you at that time, no matter how many mistranslations, how many rewrites, how many times people have fucked with the original message, despite the fact that we don't even know what the original book is. Um, that would truly be the glory of God, of the Christian God. The Christian God could foresee all of these things and put and inspire words in the people that wrote them to where every person throughout all of history could go to it and get what God wanted them to have right then and there. Otherwise, uh, anything less than that would be to shortchange the claims of the Christian God. That is the only
well,
thing it could possibly be.
Saint Augustine would have a field day. So yeah, they can. And again, this is another thing. Like, okay, I'll do this, but like
I think it's
this is
heresy to
another thing. Like
suggest
with
otherwise.
well, I mean the Catholic Church would agree with you. In fact, Saint Augustine says this. So the Bible has two truths: has the literal truth and the allegorical truth. So when God made the world in 7 days, He literally made the world in 7 days. But also, He didn't, and that there is a transubstantiation to truth there. But what matters is the allegorical truth underlying things. So it's not just the literal truth, it's basically the truth within the truth. And this is also why in translations and things, so for instance, the original translation of the Virgin Mary isn't the Virgin, it's the Maiden, Maiden Mary. But when they translated the Bible, I think from Greek, the way they did it was they had three translators. They all went into separate rooms and they translated the Bible. They all came back with the same translation, which was Maiden to Virgin. And then the pontiff at the time went, oh, well, that's divine will. That's the correct translation. It's been imparted through the translation process what the correct wording is. So we can better understand it at the time. So yeah, the Catholic Church has you covered with that kind of stuff.
I think that's I think that's Catholic propaganda. I think that's Vatican
Well,
propaganda.
that's also fine because Catholic dogma dictates that anything the Church says is true on earth is true in heaven.
It's true. Because obviously, it's the Virgin Mary because of all like the religious man god prophets before Jesus were born of a virgin. That's why she's the Virgin Mary. And it's I mean it's Mary is the constellation Virgo anyways, and that's where all the other like man god hybrids came from in that area. That's why they were all
Oh,
born on the same day
there's
and
so
all
much
that.
in like ancient religion that basically points to this. I mean, there's loads of really weird analogies in Egyptian religion to the story of Jesus and stuff like that, and like
Yeah, it's
that's
like they
pretty
had a
well true
Xerox
too.
machine,
Well, I mean,
back
so
then.
here's
It's weird.
well, one of my I'll be honest with you, one of my base theories, I can never ever prove this, for obvious reasons when I explain it, but look, we know that most religion is ancestor worship. The vast majority of ancient religion is either ancestor or nature worship. So the idea that because we're essentially all descended from a particular group, or at least a couple of groups, one larger one sort of sets the narrative, um, post the last major ice age.
Yeah, there's like
Um,
40 people or so.
it's like, yeah, there's like, we're not very genetically diverse.
Yeah.
But when you look at it from that perspective, it's not hard to believe and understand that certain things happened in the ancient world and certain stories were passed on between groups because the ancient world was actually very, very well connected. Um, this sort of view that we have that the modern global world is this new creation, it's not. It's kind of a rediscovery of anything. Like China wrote about knowing that Rome existed. They never traded directly, but like we know that China knew Rome existed, and knew things about their society, and vice versa. Um, so this idea of like constant stories being passed, and maybe originating at least in pieces in some very very old ancestor worship, because oral tradition is incredibly accurate from what we understand. Like passing on stories because it's taught as a skill. Um, it didn't leave much change. And there's always going to be little bits as language evolves and adapts, because things like syntax isn't even that fucking old. But yeah, like humans are pretty consistent, so it's totally believable that yeah, there are certain stories that are passed on. That's why. And that's why we see those sort of like repeating things like the flood, for example. Like you see that in a few religions. Um,
Sure.
so yeah,
Yeah.
it's so stuff like that. But I mean, I don't think I think it can potentially speak to the wider existence of a potential deity of a god. Um,
Oh, you should be careful saying that. You know who T Jump is?
no, actually.
He's a philosophy streamer, and somebody told me I needed to go on, so I did, and I wanted to talk about deontology, and I merely suggested that I can't discount the existence of a higher being than us, and this I don't know if he has a degree or not, but he's a philosopher. Uh, however you wanna view that. Hey, thanks, Yamato. Uh, and I had to spend like 2 hours defending the fact that like I'm not certain that there's no higher power. uh it was madness. You can't even say that like well, I can't you can't even say like I can't know to some people. You might get some people angry at you for saying that.
Oh, I mean that's fun. I mean, I believe in God, so I don't really have those issues.
Oh, I forgot you said you're religious. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So
Well,
yeah, I've got a pretty fundamental and continuous belief in a
thank you,
higher
Mr.
power.
Braindad. uh is it based off of any you said you're not like you're not Christian. Do you have like a like roots somewhere?
Well, obviously I grew up Catholic. So like I've got certain Abrahamic influences,
If
but
you
I'd
tell
say
me you're
that
a non-denominational Christian, I'm fucking out of here.
no,
All
no.
right.
Uh, I lost my faith in Christianity a long time ago, but yeah, no, I just happen to believe in a God. I challenge that belief fairly regularly. But I'd say, I mean, it's one of those things that like atheists are never going to be satisfied with, but mostly it's personal experience. And people can put that down to pattern recognition. Humans are fallible beings, and that's absolutely fine. I
That
I
was my
guess,
argument. I
yeah, like
That's my argument. I said if you tell somebody that if somebody has revelation, you can't tell them that that's delusional or anything. That if when somebody says when somebody experiences something and then they deny that experience, that's when we call people delusional. That's when we tell people that they're out of touch, there's something wrong with them, they're disordered. If somebody says they had an experience and then they like convince themselves they didn't, that's that's mental illness, like definitionally.
I
And they did not like that.
well, I find this really interesting. A lot of people are desperate for others not to believe, which I've always found really bizarre. My dad's an ardent atheist. He was sent to the church at 5. Very Catholic family. But he's not an atheist, and during my degree, I asked him about the Sunday Assembly, Richard Dawkins kind of like atheist thing. I don't know if it's in America, but it's basically they use deconsecrated churches and like go and have kind of like those meetings and celebrate that life is short, and they talk about science and some shit. Well, let's put it
It's a
this way:
social club.
There's a reason that Hitchens thought that Dawkins was out of his fucking mind most of the time. Dawkins wanted to call atheists brights. Like Hitchens was like, "You're such a dick." But my dad's response was really interesting. He was like, "Why would I go and meet with other people to talk about somebody else's imaginary friend not existing?" He's like, "I don't care if people believe in God. I don't. It doesn't impact my life. I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter. It's not real." Which is an absolutely fine answer. Like, it doesn't matter to me if people believe or don't believe it. It has no impact on me at all, because why would it?
Well, if you lived in rural Michigan, it would have an effect.
Well,
on your life.
I don't think God gives a shit whether people believe in him. Why should I? Like, why would he?
Like the Christian God gives the most shit if you believe in it. That's the whole
Yeah, but
deal.
I'm not not Christian. I don't. So the way I describe God is this. This is my personal belief. I would describe God as a man with
Mr.
a
Brain
model
Dad. That's
railway set.
amazing.
God is a man who has built something really fucking intricate and impressive. A huge scale model railway. But unless you build model railways, you cannot appreciate what an achievement this is. You cannot appreciate what creation is. And God's reason for making it is not so that the model railway loves him, it's just for the beauty of creation itself. When I look around existence, I see someone who just wants to make things. I see a content creator, but one who doesn't care about the audience. Sure. Dare
the
I
Bible
say it?
does suggest
the perfect content creator.
well, I would Froggy style. I wasn't expecting a theology conversation either, but I'm glad you like it. I do too. I think that, but like I'd say that was his intent originally, but then he wrote a book, and it is very clear in the book that he is very narcissistic and very much wants people to love him.
I mean, then again, I mean, look, I don't know if you can blame authors for the reaction they have. Otherwise, like, I think we should ban Nietzsche, Locke, Rousseau, Hobbes, fucking everyone. Do you know what? Do you know who's on my chopping block of fucking authors? Bentham. If I have to talk to one more fucking utilitarian about how great happiness is, or fucking like just universal whatever, I just don't fucking care anymore. It's fucking frustrating. Look, the truth is,
deontologist.
What would I describe myself as? Ethically speaking, I guess. Okay.
We have a lot of rare qualities in common.
Like,
also, I'm taking up the head of the person who's on the screen, and that's off-putting. There we go. That's better.
Yeah, there we go. You don't worry, you fit well onto Vincent Price. So what do I describe myself as? I don't know. I'm just someone who believes. I think like a lot of people want to really like philosophy nerds do this a lot. They want to pin down and say I am this thing, which is hilariously ironic, actually. But I don't know. I'll use an analogy that I like. I think that because obviously my master's degree is political science. If you do political science well, you should end up as politically pragmatic. You shouldn't end up with any fixed views, because you should have a wide enough understanding that you can appreciate the views of multiple people and understand that, everything's a process. I think that's also true of philosophy, and even maybe to an extent religion. If you study enough, you kind of stop saying things like I'm a Kantian or I'm an existentialist as anything other than a reference point. Like there are multiple things about me that fit into different boxes, and that's fine. I don't need to belong to any one particular group, ideology, or anything else to um, have validation, I
Uh,
guess.
yeah, when I ask if you're a deontologist, that's all I say about myself insofar as like a label for my moral philosophy, because I just want, like, if philosophy comes up, it's just it's I just want it to be clear that when I think something's wrong, I think it's wrong. You can't give me your fucking equation to tell me that it's right. I like some stuff that Kant says. I don't like some things that Kant said. But the idea that right is right and wrong is wrong is it's the only fucking thing that makes any sense to me. The math on utilitarianism, like, if you, I don't know, it's two results. It's the bunch of nonsense. Uh,
I think a lot of people want.
if it made sense, we wouldn't need more than one book about it.
Sure, no, I like that. Look, I think a lot of people also want to sound smart.
Yeah,
That's the truth. A lot of people want to be right, and being right in philosophy is maybe missing the point of philosophy, to an extent. It's I think it's Bertrand Russell, who says, um, religion tells us religion tells us the truth of what we can't know. Science tells us the truth of what we can know, and philosophy allows us to ask the questions of both, or
okay.
something to that effect. Um, it's philosophy, like, bears out the middle ground, and the loss of philosophy is, it's a great loss. I think also, the truth is, and this is true for a lot of, like, philosophy tube and everything else, a lot of people get philosophy degrees because they're like, I'm interested in thinking, and then they're like, the fuck am I going to do with this?
Yeah,
Which is basically the response to theology degrees. Basically, I got very lucky with mine, I think, um, to manage to find ways to apply it,
I
that
do like
weren't
to
just
think
teaching.
that's why I decided to not get a degree in theology, because I
Yeah,
used my
like,
thinking.
yeah, like, it's yeah. If you want good examples of hubris and foolishness, like going and getting a theology degree is definitely, fucking up there. But
I
I
do
love it.
think I would have
I
made a
love
hell
it.
of a televangelist, though. If I was a true
I think,
believer, I think I could have done it, man. I could have sold that shit. Selling God, come on, man. That's such an easy. I've been a salesman for a long time. I could sell God.
yeah, selling God's easy. Um,
For real
but yeah,
though.
like, look, no, people are looking for guidance. I agree with you. People are looking for something that will tell them
But I can't lie to people.
the world makes sense. Yeah,
Uh,
that was my problem. That's why I didn't become a politician.
I'm curious, and you say that uh, well, I don't even know how to like word this. The belief that you have, like, I guess, to like what end? I think it is very interesting, the background that you've given, and say that you believe in a higher power. I guess I'll ask you the question that I ask everybody,
Sure.
in this context. What does God have to be God to you? What is the minimum
Ooh.
criteria to be God? And I, like, when Mormons knock on my door, I let them in. My wife hates that. I've asked priests. I've asked just common religious people. I think this is one of the most interesting questions to ask somebody in terms of
What is the
religion.
minimum requirement of God? It's an interesting question. I don't know what okay,
I
so
can
I
tell
should
you what
also
the
be
most
clear
common
in.
things are.
So, but before you tell me what the most common things are, I should be clear as well. I'm not entirely monotheistic, so I believe that there are can be or may well be multiple deities. Um,
Sure.
so I'd say the minimum requirement to fit that bill is a being that I'd say it fulfills three criteria: can exist not just in linear time, but at any point in its own existence. Can exist anywhere within its own bounds or territory of its creation, and can, if not impart a soul, can at least imbue something with a soul, even if it can't create souls. At the highest level, I'd say the ability to create from nothing the soul and core of a being is the highest, and then create existence.
That is a wholly unique answer that I've never heard. There's two that I think are always required, and then there's one that gets brought in a lot. So the two that are the most required, I think, is omniscient and omnipresent. Is everything everywhere all the time, all at once.
It's a great film.
It really is. I seen it in theaters when it came back around. And then the third thing that people like to bring in a lot, which I think you kind of did too, is that had to have created the universe.
Yeah, I think creation. Well, I wouldn't say. I would say it has to have the
existence.
ability. Yeah, I'd say that.
But
I'd say
I don't
all gods
like that
create to differing extents. I don't think it has to be like a solid creation. It can just be spark. Bishop Grosseteste, who was the bishop of Lincolnshire in I think 1500s. It's a long time ago. I'm trying to get my I'm shit with dates. It's terrible, but I'm terrible with them.
Me too.
Basically, he argued that his work's actually being studied by Lancaster University because basically what he describes in his writing sounds an awful lot like the Big Bang. His argument is that what God gave into existence was light, because light is something that you instantly turn on and it spreads everywhere instantly, at least to how he saw it. So that kind of thing, that's because he was like, well, there's still time and building, and actually quite a lot of, it's like when evolution came around as a discussion, there's sort of this myth that a lot of Christians were like, well, evolution can't be true, but actually so much of natural philosophy comes from the church. Lots of the church were like, even if it wasn't accepted as doctrine, were like, yeah, that's fine. The Greek Orthodox Church had absolutely no problem with evolution. They were like, yeah, that's fine, because it doesn't need to be a solid state creation. But yeah, it depends. It depends on the person. I think that you can have an intention. I think I think chaos is part of creation itself. So a not knowing. But I also think there's a intelligence to design. I think this is why we see convergent evolution. It's why we see animals and plants having such symbiotic relationships, such perfect evolution. And there's
intelligent design is almost inarguable.
When I say intelligent, I mean I wouldn't say intelligent design. I'd say
maybe not in the same way a Christian uses it.
Yeah, I'd say reactive evolution. So there's a problem.
Well, everything works. Everything works so well that we can map it out and we can predict the future because things work so well. And then there's no reason why it would.
Sure.
So there's the universe is whether by direct purpose or by mistake, exceptionally intelligently designed.
Well, it's the clockmaker argument. If a tribal person who'd never interacted with technology found a pocket watch on a beach,
mm-hmm.
The argument is they'd recognize that as a made thing.
They may or may not, but the truth remains that it was obvious that we know that it was created. Yeah.
Sure. And also any reasonably advanced technology will appear like magic, right?
I suppose so, but I just I don't discount the possibility that the God can be the byproduct of the universe just as much as we are. I think when I really don't like to use the word God to describe the thing that we're talking about. I think that the most likely scenario is like a collective consciousness of the universe. Like I know that I'm matter. Like I'm made up of the same building blocks everything else is. I'm matter. And then you can go like the next step up in realization and go, I understand that I'm matter. So I'm matter that has become self-aware. So then you can go like one step up and go like, I am a section of matter in the universe that is aware of itself and its place in the universe. So I don't understand how a larger collection of matter could not do the same thing. I can't discount the
Sure.
possibility that larger swaths of the stuff that makes up everything could also become aware.
Sure. I mean, like, I think it's
Uh,
interesting when talking about what people believe, because I think
I mostly give credence to things that I can't discount, and I can't discount that. That is like it's my existence justifies the existence of something that is like physically a greater consciousness than mine.
yeah, I mean, it's what's a good way to put this? Like, we exist in like 4 dimensions.
Yeah.
We exist. We're up to the third dimension. The fourth dimension is we exist in linear time.
Yes.
We just can't move around in time as a dimension.
Well, we can just in
Um,
one direction.
yeah, just straightforward. I think a lot of people find it uncomfortable, but you know, if you've got, if you're on a, if you exist in a 2-dimensional plane,
Yep.
you have no real way to perceive a 3-dimensional being, other than maybe like feeling that interaction with your plane. I think true. Same is probably true of God. I think one of my favorite definitions of God came from a physicist friend of mine who said that, well, any being that exists in 17 dimensions at once would meet the criteria of a deity. There's apparently an actual scale for this. It's like anything that can do that would be God. They'd be just so complex that we would recognize that as a deity. We just have no way to recognize that it exists. We just can't see it. We can't interact with it.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. And I think that any like even like the Christian God, when people say that they hear the voice of God, I think that the voice of God wouldn't be like English in your ear. I think that it would have to be like this is a non-physical entity, and people seem to think that there's going to be a physical interaction. That doesn't make any fucking sense at all. I think that you would have to see the existence of God through like coincidence or like prayer and being answered. Like I think that a lot of things that Christians say that atheists dismiss is like that's all you could fucking get. You could never have God doesn't have a mouth. He doesn't have a
yeah.
tongue. He can't make sounds in your ear. Um but if you're at a low
Well, I
point
think
and you
it's
pray,
interesting
like
that we've
can make
humanized down deific beings or divine beings. Like when you look at like old ideas of angels, they are burning rings of eyes with wings. You know, they're
I love biblically
seraphim,
accurate
or
anger
you
angels.
know,
Yeah.
like um,
It's
and
so
yet
funny. You're saying a
we've
bunch of
made
things that I tell people in real life that make them look at me funny.
it's what a theology degree does to you. But yeah, it's I don't know. I've had fun interactions with it. I was at a dinner party a few years ago, and one of the guests who is a therapist, uh, we were talking about something, and it was to do with religion. I was like, "Well, you know, I believe in God." And he was like, "What? You believe in God?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I believe in God. Why? Why?" It's like, but you're so cynical. How can you have such an irrational belief?" And I was like, "Okay, well, I do. I don't know what to fucking tell you, dude." Um, and he he went down this whole line of
Oh, he didn't
thinking.
stop?
Oh no, it ruined the dinner party. It was very awkward. Um, but he made the assumption. He made a load of assumptions that when I said I was religious, I was Christian, and he was like, "So, here's one for you. There is a worm that lives in people's eyes. Its sole purpose is to live in people's eyes and make people go blind. What kind of god creates a worm like that?" And my response didn't take me very long. I just said, well, that sounds like a really cool worm. What makes you think God loves you any more than he loves the worm? We don't understand these things. We don't. I don't think we have the capacity. We have, at best, a capacity to glimpse divinity, and that's enough. That's enough. Like, I don't need more than that.
Yeah, the
That's
saying
okay.
that I say is that I can't pretend to know the mind of God. I
Yeah,
can or and then shit, I don't remember who said it, but I think it was actually Jordan Maxwell. I don't know if you know who that is. Uh,
it rings a
he
bell.
he's like one of the like world authorities on like occult in general. He says I can't tell you what God is, but I can tell you what he isn't.
I know that quite. Yeah.
And it's it's pretty simple, but I think that it stands in the face of every fucking person who's religious telling you what God is. Um, I think that doubt is a really real is the most healthy thing that you can have when you interact with belief and disbelief at the same time. You should have you
Ideas
should
should
have
be able to
willful doubt
stand
on
up
both
to,
ends.
yeah, look, ideas should be able to stand up to scrutiny. If part of my belief is proven wrong, then that belief needs to change. I think that's pretty fundamental. Some of it can't be because of the nature of the belief, which is fine. But it's also why I try not to like go out and convert people. I'm not going to proselytize, preach to people about it, because again, I also genuinely believe God doesn't care whether people believe in him or not. So again, why would I? And like, from my perspective, some people are going to look at me and go, well, you believe in God, you're an idiot. And I'm like, that's fine, you're allowed to have that opinion. I'm not that defensive about it. That's okay, and people are entitled to that belief as well. It's absolutely fine,
I
you know.
actually had the reverse of your dinner party. When I was younger, by mistake, I'm embarrassed about it. I was playing a Go, a board game with my friend called Go, and he said something and I was like, "Oh, you believe in God?" And he was like, "Yeah." Why? And like he was like so weirded out that I said it like that. I was like, "I just always thought you were smarter than that." And like as soon as I said it, I realized I was a huge fucking dick. Cuz he's my friend. I wasn't trying to offend him, but that was just how I thought of it when I was like 16. Uh
Yeah, a
and
lot
then
of
I
people do.
stopped though. That's why I was really surprised when your dinner party guy just kept going. I was like, "Oh, he should have just shut the fuck up after that. That was extremely rude."
Well, look, a lot of people. Let's go to put this. Again, it's this thing of a lot of people really need validation for their intelligence, their beliefs. They need to know that what they believe is right and correct, and that's not unusual. That doesn't make them dumb or anything. That's a really human response. Like, we're faith-based creatures. Like, everyone believes in something. It's not necessarily a higher power, but you'll people who are anti-theist have strong beliefs about that truth, um, because that's how humans work. We need to believe in things. The example I always use is like, you will find that people will actually get, depending on the person, actually get upset about having certain parts of their view of reality challenged. And the
Yeah.
example I always used was at the pub. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to just refer to my pint glass as a bowl for the rest of the night and see how people reacted. Because I'd be out with, say, like friends who were in the hard sciences, and generally speaking, they did not give a shit. They didn't care. They were like, okay, well, it's just Beckett being weird. That's fine. But the philosophy friends I had, fuck me, and the humanities, they hated it. They got so frustrated because they were like, it's not a bowl, it's a glass. You need to refer to it as a glass. Why would you call it a glass? And it's because, and this is the same reason people get angry about God. It becomes part of your fundamental belief in reality, and then
Yes.
like then having that challenged is a physically, like, I think it's been studied, is like an actual painful process.
Well, I think for the most part, I think I'd have to correct and say that it doesn't become, it is a foundational thing. Most people are introduced in religion as a part of like how they understand the world around them. It's usually brought in by their parents. And so everything that has ever happened in their entire life and everything that exists is all predicated on because of God. So, yeah, when you challenge that, like, you can't remove the foundation from a house and expect that house to be okay and still standing just like it was before. It's going to get fucked up. Everything is built on top of the idea that, like, because God, you have to have God there to still have the structure standing. It's
Yeah.
it's vital. And I think part of the reason why I don't generally talk about religion with people anymore is that I think that I'm doing a bad thing. I can only cause harm in those conversations. I don't think I can do any good when I talk to a religious person about challenging their beliefs, because they've wanted to challenge them. If they were in a position to do that, they'd already be doing it, because I think deep down we all know that if we can't challenge an idea, then it's not valuable. But that means they can't do it. And I just think that if
Oh,
you're
it's a scary process for most, but like, and this is again true of everything. It's like a scary process of I might be wrong, right? Like I could be wrong. Like what if there is a God? What if there's not? Like what if it's the wrong religion? And
uh,
people get terrified of this. You see it a lot in politics.
It's scary
You
for the
know,
right reasons, though. It'd be like, what if somebody's like, what if your mother didn't actually love you? What if she actually fucking hated you? And if you go back, I can point out 7 things right offhand to kind of show you that when you were a kid, you thought that they were like big moments for you, whereas like a bonding moment between you and your mom, and she really loved you, but she was actually doing things to fuck you over. You'd be like, shut the fuck up. Don't talk about my mom like that, you know? You would, most people at least, who had a good relationship with their mother, they would outright reject it. They wouldn't consider it, and it would freak them the fuck out. Just the idea of it. But like, this is like the mother of everything.
mm. Yeah,
I just,
people are gonna have those responses, and that's absolutely fine. We've already established that I am God, Hoz. Yes, Hoz is God. That's absolutely, that is true. That is Beckett of Crab's law.
say Haz or Hans.
Yeah, Hosroda.
Oh, okay.
Hosroda.
Uh, I it's so I basically not exactly, but I basically live where he's from. That's so weird. Yes. I showed my girlfriend a clip of him before, and she was like, "Oh, he acts like everybody I went to high school with." And she went
Like,
to high school literally where he's from, so that was really funny.
oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, Hoz is my head mod. All my streams are based around him. I like basically just like I only stream for Hoz, and other people just occasionally show up and watch. That's pretty much it. That's how I describe my content.
that's funny.
But yeah, like no, it's been fun having a conversation. Okay, where would you like to go back to with free speech?
Yeah, we'll get back to. I just to Bridget, I want to say that thank you. This is an extremely this the where we went off the tracks there. It's an extremely rare experience for me, where I get to talk to somebody who has any fucking clue what they're talking about and have an intelligent, non-pretentious conversation about religion. It was phenomenal.
Well,
It's very meaningful to
it's a
me.
pleasure. Well, it's a pleasure. It's why I do this. People seem to like keep doubting me when I say things like I'm not I'm not trying to do things for clout or build an audience or anything. Things that actually like Stardust said to me, she's like, you have to stop saying that. People will still, but I say it partly because
It's
it actually
true.
matters to me. Yeah, it's one of the few things it does. Like some of the content comments I had back from people were like, well, it's really good content. This is good content. You need to stop cucking the content here. And I'm like, I don't care about any of that shit. Just leave me alone. And somebody said, oh, you changed the stream setup. You've not got a cam anymore. You've got rid of chat. You've got rid of notifications. You got rid of everything. Like, you're going to be less watchable. I'm like, good. Don't fucking watch me, please. Like, I actually I'm really grateful for all the support. I know genuinely, like, I am actually really grateful for all the support and the viewers I've got. But I'm like, I want a small community that watches me and hangs out with me. That's pretty much it.
I get
like
it.
I'm not looking for more. I don't want to go viral. I don't want to do any of that shit. Like I just want to be me and do my little weird thing in the internet and be kind of left the fuck alone.
My
I don't
only
want to sit
desire
on
for
a dog
growth is so
fucker
that I can
panel.
talk to more people that have interest, like so I can have conversations like this. And if I know somebody has the ability to have a conversation like this, if it gives me more access, that's it though. But I don't put that much effort into that because I just like doing this. This is very fun. And
Yeah, no,
I
I'm the
steadily
same.
growing.
This is how I relax.
Every
You know?
month is like better than the last one, save for like the first month I really started trying. But it's I think that what you said resonates with me a lot. Like I don't think I've ever done anything on the internet for clout.
Yeah, I just want to
Yamato, you're
be sort
not.
of. I just want to be I just want to be me and have fun and chill out. That's pretty good. What's Yamato doing?
He wanted to come in here and talk, and I said, okay, get into any VC. He said, I am, but like you can see the VCs, right? There's
Give me
nobody
a
in
sec.
any of them but us. We're in the stream only.
It's Eldrazi's thing. Oh, I see him. He's below us.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Do you mind if he comes in?
No, not so.
Okay, I got to give him a roll to get in here. Oh wait, you actually don't make content. I got to give you a stream guest. There you go. And move to. Hey man, how's it going?
Hey, I saw you guys were talking about free speech, and I wanted to hop in on it.
Cool. That's a good way to anchor us back. We were
Yeah,
supposed to be
sure,
talking
yeah.
about free speech, but we ended up talking about
No. The
religion.
other conversation you guys was having was pretty good. I just like when it comes to religion, I stopped being religious over time. Like, I don't know. It was other factors like it not being a thing I was really into. Like I had my aunt pushing it on me, and that made me hate it. But I've always taken the high road of never knocking anyone for wanting to be religious or to believe in something.
I like the fact that you're like it's completely justified rationale. I hear it a lot, but it's also the same one people give for why they don't read much. I was made to do it at school. I never read any fun books. Come join my
school's
cult,
read
Yamato.
fun books. We read
No,
fun
but,
books
like-
in my school.
Like, okay, I know it sounds like that, right? But I'm serious. Like, my aunt was like super religious, right? And I lived with her for forever. She like brainwashed her children. It was like fucking weird. They were like go to sleep early, like at fucking 6 o'clock in a day. It was like really, really weird shit.
Yeah, it sounds standard. Sounds standard.
Okay, well, all right.
Well, it sounds terrible, but
Sure,
it's
the
also,
reason
like,
why I
sounds
never sleep is
religious.
because my parents made me go to bed.
Hey, Ice Beans. How you doing? We're talking about anything tonight, but I think we're going back to free speech. Yamato,
Yeah.
give us your... Sorry, I'm just taking over like Eldrazi's conversation. I know it's like fucking his TC, his BC.
I think the reason why, like, and this harkens back to the conversation that we was having with Kid Not Kid about like feminism, right? Like, freedom of speech has allowed us to do so many things, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's also like has harmed people in a way. Like, just think about the men's right advocates. Like, we've gotten to the point where when we let people like basically tell these dudes that feel like they don't matter in society, that they actually don't, and they're the cause of their own problems.
Wait. What's the issue with the men's right advocates?
Is that
stating?
like feminism kind of helps make it worse? That's the conversation that we had.
We had a long conversation.
Yeah,
on
it
this.
was a
We're not
long
rehashing
conversation.
it.
Okay, yeah, because I was say there's a lot to pick apart in what you just said. So we'll just keep on the. I'll avoid it.
We definitely picked it apart, but like, I'm denying free speech, Eldrazi. Fuck off! I'm not doing it again. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, like it was. Look, I think. Yeah, I think we give up ground to people who don't have the best intentions. For oh, sorry, yawning. We cede ground to people who okay. So here's a contentious take. I think an awful lot of people who spend a lot of time talking about how bad free speech is and how we need to fight against the evils of how it is used by the right wingers are very keen to protect their own free speech. It's very much a case of all property is theft except for mine, which I find very frustrating. Like it's interesting when you hear people challenged on their own bigotry on the left, whether it's racism or xenophobia or racism. Like there are like liberals who will like go around being like, yeah, well, we can call like black cops the N-word. That's fine because we're fighting racism by doing that.
My favorite tweet from the chick that thought it was okay, the call Clarence Thomas the N-word because Roe v. Wade is very bad.
Well, I think there's one good reason to call that cop that, and it's because you're racist and you like calling people that word. I don't think that everybody who's ever said that word is racist, but I think if you really want to come up with a good reason to call somebody else it, that's at least a little bit racist, bare minimum, but probably a lot of bit racist.
Yeah, like look.
You just call him a bitch. You could call him a bunch of other things.
I mean, look. There's I like streaming on Odyssey because people will come in and start using slurs and things, and it's a very. But I've like I like straight up. Like I'm just like I want to have an environment where people can come in, say whatever they want. Nobody will be able to like screen cap it because nobody can watch any of the streams back on Twitch because they'll instantly get fucking banned because the F slur is said every 5 fucking seconds. It's great. But it's I think I do think people have built up sensitivities. Now I'd also argue that like people can come at me for that. So if like people want to come at me and be like, you're streaming on Odyssey and you're saying all these things and doing all this stuff and it's really problematic, I'm like, yeah, it is. I just don't care. Like it's worth doing.
So wait, do you say a lot of things that would like get you the boot from Twitch?
So I'm LGBT and I use the F slur to refer to myself all the time. So I'll use that word. I use that word on Odyssey streams.
Fucking cheater. Because you know what though, you could just say that. I would have no idea. You could just be like, "No, I am. It's cool."
Well,
that's not really my point. But cheater.
No. I won't say the N word. Just because I don't want to more than anything else. I think I'm careful with that word.
Don't get me wrong. I don't give a fuck about hurting people's feelings or systemic racism. I just don't feel like doing it. That's all.
Yeah, actually, I think. I think there's an extent where well, okay, so I put it this way. I stream on Odyssey rather than YouTube for those kind of things. Specifically because people know what they're getting into. So it's very much sort of like if you go into like a BDSM dungeon and then you're like, wow, there is a lot of whips and leather in here. It's like, yeah, it's a BDS dungeon. Like, fucking what did you expect? So if I was doing that on Twitch, that would be one thing. But when I want to do stuff like that, and I've got people in my community who know what they're getting into, who like are from older parts of the internet or want to come and hang out with that, they know what they're getting into. The sign on the door is where I am streaming.
Yeah.
So my argument would be like the argument of, well, it can cause harm. I'm like, okay, maybe, but like, so can fucking everything to like some extent. Like, I feel like I've done my due diligence enough by going somewhere else, a way to go and make that content. That it's kind of like people arguing, well, pornography is harming everybody, and like pornography harms me. Don't watch porn then.
Yeah.
Look
It's
like
it's going on the big
don't
screen.
yeah, don't watch me then. Like that's it's that simple.
Very much don't watch me if I'm watching porn.
Yeah,
Eyes on the screen, bud.
yeah, pretty much.
Hey,
You can watch me when I'm watching it when we're down in the BDSM dungeon. That's the appropriate time and place.
That's the appropriate.
You can watch it on your own time, okay? Not while I'm watching, okay?
Yeah, so like, but if people are coming, Odyssey is a right-wing streaming site. I think very right-wing.
Really?
Well, it's not. It's for everyone, but it's got that reputation because people like Lawrence Southern are involved in it and things. But it's Odyssey is a free speech streaming platform. The TOS of Odyssey is don't break the law, basically.
I see. So it's like Rumble.
Yeah.
I think Rumble had that movie. What the fuck was it called? Oh my god! I literally made a video about this movie and I can't remember what it's called. Died Suddenly. And that's that one pushes on my free speech beliefs quite a bit. It is a bunch of unjustified, even by their own standard. They didn't even claim to have any justifications or any evidence to back up the idea that the COVID vaccine is killing people. They just have a bunch of coroners, not doctors, giving their opinions and saying things that are blatantly incorrect, reporting people that are dead that aren't, to get people to not get the vaccine. It's like, I feel like it borders on so
misinformation,
cyber terrorism.
So misinformation is an interesting one when it comes to free speech. I think that okay.
It is. That's why I'm addressing it.
No. It's I want to phrase my answer carefully here. So I think when it comes to things like misinformation, and conspiracy theories and everything else, they have a right to exist because ultimately there's a twofold problem with stopping conspiracy theories existing. And again, it comes down to
I used to have a conspiracy show every Saturday.
Yeah, so, I mean, part of the problem is if you stop that thing existing, you'll shut down a lot of other things as well. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that turn out to be true, more than we're comfortable with.
Correct.
Like, obviously not the more wacky ones, but people have a right to question things. I'd argue also that, like, part of the big problem around the medical misinformation stuff is there is way more serious stuff than the COVID things. Like, stuff like the way essential oils lobby and get around the government, stuff like that, the health problems of health promises of MLMs.
I think that COVID's worse than the oils.
I think that I don't know if from a misinformation point of view, I don't know if I agree with you.
Well, if we're talking about the harm caused by misinformation.
Well, that misinformation leads people to bankrupt themselves and turn into weird fanatical cultists.
Fair. I guess the COVID misinformation just leads people to not get the vaccine and die, but being broke is a certain type of death, I suppose. I'm sorry. I'm not actually trying to be an asshole. I guess I'm being playful about it.
Emotional. Yeah, no, you've got an emotional investment and bias. It's understandable. COVID was big. You've also got to understand, like, okay, so from my perspective, it's twofold, and it's also British. We don't have an anti-vax issue here. Outside of some of our minority communities,
I see.
We kind of went through our anti-vax thing in the 90s. And because we went through that, it kind of dampened everyone's kind of mistrust because it was such a big fucking thing here that
Yeah.
now people are like, yeah, vaccines are fine.
Because of how big it was over there is what made it slowly creep in over here. I actually know like the whole history of the 3 combined vaccine. I can't think of the name of it. It's like
the
rubella,
fucking mumps, measles, and rubella.
There you go.
MMR.
So
so yeah, but that kind of dampened down. Like you'll still find it in minority communities. There's like a lot of vaccine hesitancy, but it's difficult to quantify. The other thing is, I do think people have the right to control what they put into their own bodies, but also in the same breath that you also have the right not to hire those people, right?
Yeah,
So
I just don't think you should trick people about what they put into their body. Well, so I guess let me put it this way: misinformation on its own is shitty, but like you should probably be allowed to lie. But if I misinform you, that if I tell you that like your car works right, I just looked over, your car works fine, you can trust me, and then your car doesn't work right because I lied to you and you get into an accident. I think I have something to do with that. I think there's some culpability on my end.
So
the problem is when it's on YouTube, we can't track down the people.
What about during the pandemic when, because of PPE shortages, they said masks weren't effective to stop people panic buying masks?
I think that's bad.
But it was for a good, right? It's a lie. It's a lie to stop, so to make sure that the people who needed masks could get them.
But it also made people who needed masks not be able to get them as well. So like when I couldn't, if I was going out of my house, I would argue that I'm somebody who would have needed it because I'm high risk.
Sure.
So it also keeps it out of people's hands who also need it too. It's just like misinformation for the sake of triage, I think is wrong. So if you wanted that to happen, you could have just put it in like an executive order or whatever to there's an article that can be signed to make companies produce more of a thing. They could have just done that.
So when it comes to like misinformation, right? Like at least about like elections and shit like that, I'm actually for like fucking silencing people. I know, right? Like I do love free speech. I don't know, like anything that makes fucking people like literally fucking go march into like a fucking government building, like storm the Capitol. I mean, that you don't think that type of misinformation about like the a stolen election is harmful?
Would you silence people when they're talking about certain crime statistics to paint narratives that aren't exactly true?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I'm a deontologist. I think lying's wrong. I would never endorse lying.
Well, yeah, then you would. Okay, I can acknowledge there are certain things that we can silence, and certain things that we probably shouldn't be able to silence. But things that make people go like fucking radical and extreme and start like wanting to like kill people or just like do crazy shit should be like silenced.
That's huge amounts of the content that comes out of the left.
I don't know if I believe in that. I don't know if I believe.
I don't.
If you no.
Like yeah, maybe
if somebody is sat there. No. If somebody is sat there saying the system hates you and is trying to kill you, it wants to leave you in poverty, and just by the dint of like what skin color you're born with, you are going to suffer, and you need to fight. You need to use whatever tools are available to you to overthrow the system.
I don't know if I consider that misinformation though. That's just sharing an opinion. That's not like a deliberate obfuscation of facts. That's people who say that believe that shit. They just don't want to do it. They just don't want to take the action themselves.
Yeah, but there are people who genuinely believe that the vaccine is dangerous. Who decides what's misinformation? And what if those people had been right?
Well, they decided that because it was to them, it was pushed on them They just wanted to go outside. They just wanted to break the rules because it became so politicized.
So what if those people were right? I'm glad I took the vaccine then, because I don't want to be the one person who believes in science and chose not to take the vaccine and then have to live in the world. Like, have you met these fucking people who are like proud, like, oh, I didn't even get the fucking vaccine. You got the vaccine? Fucking sheep. Like, I don't want to live in a world that's just those people.
Yeah, I know I got the vaccine too, right? And I had COVID, so like, right. I know a lot of black people that just was like, I didn't get that. I ain't want the government fucking like, putting that shit in my body. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, but bro, I'm trying to work.
Look, I'm with you on the vaccine. I've been vaccinated. I'm not like sat here like questioning the vaccine, but like my point is, you're both sort of saying, well, it's we need to shut down things that are potentially misinformation. We need to control that flow. Who decides that?
I don't think that I don't think I said that we need to shut it down. I said there's a line here.
Yamato said
I'm saying like, if someone is on a forum saying that fucking Democrats are a gang of pedophiles, right? And they're like holding children into a fucking pizza place. I'm sorry if I want to stop the fucking pizza place from getting shot up by some random dude or just having fucking guns in some random person's face. I'm not trying to be an asshole.
But again, if they're saying that Republicans are out there planning to kill you,
I would do the same for the left.
Okay, as long as we're being like,
I'm being like,
about this.
I would like, honestly, I'm being like consistent here. I would do the same for the left. If the left was like, yo, Republicans are coming, grab fucking guns, start getting ready, let's go have fun, boys. I would be like, whoa, chill out, buddy.
You guys are implying that they weren't fucking kids in that pizza place? I'm just kidding. I don't believe that.
We will never know. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. So,
I feel like it's pretty safe to know, but some of those emails are pretty sussy. But no, so what do you? So I understand that it's complicated, and this seems like maybe there's some kind of line for you guys too. But like, how do you think that shapes up? Where does freedom of speech meet public safety?
I think the problem is that when you run again, it's just you set the precedent, and once you have that precedent, people will use it. The next time something comes up, let's say an actual dangerous medication gets released.
Yeah.
Let's say let's say the opioid crisis. Let's just take the opioid crisis. Let's take a real example. You've got multiple medical companies arguing it's safe. They argue to doctors it's safe. Doctors prescribe it to their patients it's safe, and you end up with the opioid crisis. Let's say that that because the establishment have said this is safe, anybody who questions whether opioids are highly addictive is labeled as misinformation and shut down. Because that's against the medical orthodoxy currently. That everyone else says it's safe. Doctors are prescribing it. You're a loon, dangerously trying to stop people taking pain medication.
Yeah, well, I would say, then it becomes. I think it becomes a matter of, you're saying that it's not safe. Whether or not you're right at the end isn't as important as like, how are you drawing this conclusion? So if you're just gonna say like, well, have you ever seen anybody take 2 Vicodin before? Like, my mom took Vicodin and then she died. My dad took OxyContin and he had a heart attack. Like,
okay, but there are people saying people have got the COVID vaccines now. Look at the heart attack rates.
That's why I'm using this comparison. Yeah, that's I would say that this is dangerously misleading people with anecdotal information. This isn't like scientific data. So I'd say you were still wrong if you criticized opiates prior to having any like medical data that showed that there was something wrong. We have to go with like what the data says. I don't think that we should preach medical advice like in general too.
Well,
like I don't think we should
politicize medical advice.
100%.
And I don't think it's a medical. I don't think it's a medical issue. I think there's been a real mistake of both sides. The minute you politicize medicine, you're a little fucked. And both sides did this a lot. Again, run up to the election, Biden and Harris both said I would not take Trump's vaccine, And then they were surprised that people were hesitant about taking the vaccine. Now, I don't think that's purely down to them. I'm not laying that at the door. But again, it was a dumb thing to fucking say. It's a dangerous thing to say because it wasn't Trump's vaccine. It was a vaccine being developed by pharmaceutical companies. And when we politicize stuff like that, you play a dangerous fucking game. And all nations did this. It's why China's still in constant lockdowns. Why New Zealand's had so many issues getting out of lockdown. It's why like in America, there's a much stronger reaction having this conversation with Americans than if I was with British people. We stopped wearing masks ages ago in England. In fact, actually, like there's a difference between how Scotland's reacted to the COVID to England. Like Britain stopped wearing the
N95s.
Yeah, like I don't think we ever wear like whatever the fuck they were. Like, look, I haven't worn a mask in like 2 years.
Oh god!
Like
I still get nervous when I go into the gas station without one.
I still wear a mask at work.
It just doesn't come up. Honestly, like actually, the last time I wore a mask was when I was in America in November. Because it mattered that. Like,
I was about to say, you might feel different if you're in America. Yeah. Like, so Michigan, where I live, has been the worst state a bunch of fucking times. And like, the county that I used to live in, which is where like my kid was born, and my kid lived there at the time, was like, oh, it's the worst county in Michigan. Michigan's the worst county or state in the United States. The United States is the worst. So I was like, this is like literally the worst place in the entire world per capita for COVID. I used to live there, and it was that 4 times in the first year of COVID.
Look. Americans have had a much more politicized impact to it. In England, it's different. Like, so in America's case, there's a lot of cases of things like politicians doing things like going to get haircuts, having meetings in restaurants, breaking their own COVID rules in the US, right?
Yeah.
That also happened in the UK. It's just the police brought criminal criminal actions against our prime minister and the chancellor of the exchequer for doing it.
That's wasn't there
cool.
Wait.
But it also meant that people stopped caring as much because they were like, well, if the fucking prime minister is having a Christmas party, and also from our perspective, we were like, look, I'll just put it this way. I've said this before. I didn't see my mum for like a year and a half because of COVID. She was high risk. If I hadn't finally gone, fuck it, I need to move home. I got 6 months with my mum before she died. I would never have had that. The lockdowns and the procedures stole time away from me and my mother. And here's the important bit. Our government didn't follow those fucking rules. They expected us to.
So I have
do you acknowledge that it gave
kind of
probably gave people more time with their family members though by keeping them from going and spreading it to them?
The COVID procedures and the actions of lockdown are one of the major contributing factors to why my mum is dead. So I have a lot less fucking sympathy. Actions taken on with the NHS and everything else, if it was not for those actions and the effects of COVID, the lockdowns and access to specialists that changed under the pandemic, particularly around certain rules in the UK, my mum would still be alive. And those actions were taken by politicians who politicized things far beyond when they needed to, and also used COVID as a cover for frankly bad actions they were taking. So I have a lot less fucking sympathy.
I think
the development of the vaccine mattered. Getting the vaccine out to high risk, but the continuity beyond that point caused actual harm, and I'm not alone in that.
I get I'm maybe not super comfortable saying much against that because it's there's a lot of personal stuff that happened for you, and I don't think that I could say all the things.
I get why people freak about being high risk. I understand that, but
if you've ever almost died of an asthma attack, you really, really don't want to die.
Again, I'm not.
I had heart pains, so that shit hurt like really, really bad. Like I almost died due to I think I had pneumonia and that triggered a fucking an attack. So I was just like, okay, so yeah, I understand. But there was other factors, right? Due to like people just not giving a fuck, like being what it was like 100 pounds for like just being outside. There was also like accounts of like people taking pictures, and it was like that was like a year old that, and they got like charged for going outside, like because people were like snitching, right? At least that's what was happening in England.
Oh, let's see, this if that happened in the United States, it would have been like really extreme rare cases.
Yeah, there was a lot of shit here that happened, and on the other side of it, like look,
You guys
again,
doing
I
all
had
better than
long
us.
COVID. Like I had, well, we had really high numbers, but also we had high numbers in really urban environments because fucking urban environments, there's high
Yeah.
transition rates. It's not this isn't complicated. But at the same time, look, I had long COVID. COVID shouldn't be treated as a joke. There were really good reasons to lock down, but there are complexities here to the decisions that were made and the actions, the long-term effects of those actions. People lost time, and ultimately the choices that were made and the prioritizations that were done cost lives. And that fucking sucks. So
Thank you, West Nile.
that's kind of just
for
the
following
reality.
me.
So when people
What a
want to
convenient name
talk
for the
about
conversation to pop up.
the vaccines, about the importance of what's a good way to put this? That everything we did had to be done. I reject that, because people always talk about it from the perspective, well, it kept me safe, it kept my loved ones safe. It's not from the perspective of those of us who kind of had to suffer because of it. Which, sorry, I need a drink. Hold on. Oh, my throat's dying. Who had to suffer through it, because these things had fucking consequences, and pretending otherwise and watching politicians. This is why I always get. I've had people say, well, Nancy Pelosi went for a haircut. That's she should be able to go for a haircut. It's like,
No.
yeah, I don't disagree with you from the perspective of people are people, but if you're making those rules and you expect people to follow them, and also you're asking a lot of the public. This is another one like climate change. There's a lot of, you need to do this, or everyone's going to die. It's like, you kind of don't get to do that and then not follow your own fucking rules. Boris Johnson does not get to have a fucking Christmas party. Sorry, it's fucking ridiculous. And a lot of people will excuse their favorite politician.
No. Like, we didn't excuse any of the fucking influencers who are throwing parties like over here in America. We like fucking like dog those people and fucking like made it known that like this shit was like stupid. We do, and then we had with the college kids going to spring break. All those motherfuckers caught COVID, and everyone was like laughing at them because they were stupid. Boris Johnson is a fucking politician. He should have realized everything that he says. People follow him and they watch him and stuff like that. When he threw that, I don't know what he was thinking about throwing that fucking. Is
that true of Obama?
Did Obama fucking?
Obama had a birthday party that turned into a super spreader event.
Oh shit! Well, fuck Obama then. Fuck Obama was stupid. He should have realized.
Hold on, very quickly, boss it. There's too much hindsight in this analysis. Politicians behaving badly does not excuse reactionary denialism. I'm not saying it does at all. Like that's not my point. But
I've been dying for a COVID conversation, but I feel like I can't say anything. Your situation.
Look, you're
is,
fine. Look,
no, you're fine.
I never get actually like pissed at anyone. You're fine. You can pretty much.
No, I guess I'm saying that you've had something like actually bad happen because of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do it without.
One second. I just want to address this because I feel like Bossett is completely missing my point.
I do want to say
climate
something
change.
after you
Oh no,
talk.
the politicians approved a new mine better throw out renewables. That's not my fucking point, Bossett. My point is that politicians spend a lot of time saying this is your responsibility and that's how we're going to solve things. And this happens an awful lot with climate change. Go and recycle. Go and make a choice to buy an electric car because it puts the emphasis on people and ultimately our like impact to this shit is fucking tiny. It's so small. And then it gives time for larger corporate interests and political interests to continue what they're doing that's causing harm, or not have to take the responsibility that they need to take. It's not about, oh, politicians have opened a mind, let's throw everything out. It's actively making the problem of the public, when it's actually not something just the average person or even like large groups of people can realistically change. It's irresponsible leadership to do that. And in the same way, like saying, well, only you can stop this happening. It's like, yeah, that's true, but you want out of your politicians good leadership. If they can't do that, they shouldn't be in power. And like, it's fine. Nobody's fucking perfect. I'm not saying they are. But this whole thing of going, oh, well, it doesn't excuse the reactionary denialism. I never fucking said it did. But at the same time, like,
It's a pretty important time to be perfect as a public official.
Yeah, it's not about it's not about going, we'll throw everything out. It's hold on. That doesn't make it not also your responsibility. Not a bit conspiracy to say, oh, the corporations will do bad things. We need both. And COVID, etc., is a good example of the public needing to act. I'm not saying the public didn't need to act. I'm not saying I didn't get vaccinated or I didn't take the space. I'm saying that the other side of that responsibility was not fully fulfilled by politicians, and it was fulfilled by the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people followed procedures and made those concessions to their life. And a lot of politicians didn't. And the force on politicians should be fucking higher. I don't understand how this is a controversial take, because a lot of people like seem to go, well, politicians are people too, and when they fuck up, we should just accept that. And I'm just like, fucking, that's just weak. It's just a weak argument. Like, if you don't expect your politicians to be better, if you're prepared to excuse the fucking bad actions when they fuck up, it's like, I don't see the point of fucking voting at that point.
Some jobs you have to be better than the average person to do.
Yeah. You hate politicians for it, but doesn't make the actions imposed on the public wrong. It's not that it makes them wrong. It's that the decisions certain politicians made had the impact of killing people. They can't know that. They can't. Hold on, give me a second, Yamato, because this, I know.
I know. I just want to say something real quick.
It just quickly, because it's like, it's not that it makes it wrong. It's that this idea that we just continue to pretend that some of those things didn't happen, or that the public reacted oddly. Like there's this argument with Britain that, oh, well, Britain, like England, stopped wearing masks because it's just the reactionary denialism. It's like, well, it's understandable that that's the fucking outcome, because some of the other actions that politicians took cost people their lives. People died who didn't need to. People lost time and were terrified. Like, the mental health damage from the pandemic is huge. And actually, with lockdowns, we have pretty good fucking data from the Ebola virus in Africa of why lockdowns are not fully effective. And there were things there that were just ignored.
So
the way China did it was pretty effective.
I mean,
I don't condone it, but it worked.
I mean, sealing people in their house with no ability to get food, yeah, I guess that is effective, but it's gonna have some terrible outcomes, right? Listen, Beckett's chat. It's not about like normal people like still happen to carry the standards. It's about like these people are high up in government, right? They are supposed to be the people who are supposed to be showing leadership. They're supposed to be following their own rules. If they can't follow their own rules, then that fucks the entire system, because no one is going to follow the rules that they have set. That's all I'm going.
I think I'd extend it to this, Bossa. Like, if politicians are still, if politicians stay in power, if they don't resign over fucking up those actions,
Discord, but the stream can still hear me.
I actually don't blame the public for being like, well, clearly it's not bad enough that you resign over it.
I'm just gonna wait for Beckett to finish talking. I'm gonna let him know.
Masks do work. So do vaccines. So do social distancing. I've never said otherwise. but you can't just people are scared and fucking angry. You just can't. I disagree that you can put that kind of responsibility on people, truthfully, because people are going to act the same way people always do. And if our politicians aren't better, and if our political system doesn't force them to be better, then you can't expect that of the public.
Yeah, like
it's an unfair standard to hold the public to. Genuinely, it's just like you can say this about like, well, individuals. It's all down to the individual. Everyone should know how to act. But like, fuck, if you're sat there worried about whether you're going to be able to continue to feed your family, if you haven't seen your other family members in like a year and a half, if you've had to watch like your politicians on the back of this fuck around and play political games in Scotland, Scotland got sent money for Nightingale hospitals, so to set up like COVID hospitals all over the place. And then their argument was, we don't want Nightingale hospitals, we want a Scottish version. So they didn't distribute that money. They didn't distribute the fucking businesses' money.
Oh fuck. I just thought about all the shit that just happened over COVID and how terrible it was. Like the fucking COVID relief fund being taken advantage of by fucking businesses that didn't even need it.
Hey
Fuck.
guys, real quick. My wife and girlfriend just got home, and it is close to midnight for me. I gotta get going, but God damn it, do I love every single time that we got off track. It was just like all these things that I really like talking about. You guys are
Sorry, I always end up arguing with
this is like a
bad habit.
This is like a this would be a stream that I would be super fucking happy to watch. So I'm really happy to have been one of the people engaged in this conversation. The religion stuff was like off the charts for me. COVID stuff, it's always hard for me to talk about COVID when somebody says they lost someone. I don't know how to manage my my thoughts and emotions because I don't know how to do it without feeling like I'm trying to like debate you out of your emotions, which I think is shitty.
We all like have our biases and we're all angry about things.
It's just hard for me to do it.
Oh yeah, no, but that's fine. I'm never going to be offended. I'm not like angry at Bossett for his points or disagreeing with me, and he's like going to vigorously disagree with me. Again, like any idea that is worth having should be challenged. And what happened to me personally, also like again biases. If anything, it makes me less trustable on the subject. Like that's worth accepting. Like if we can't be honest about the fact that the biases are going to influence our judgment, like, and I'd probably make arguments. I'd probably make different arguments in different circumstances that were similar. Like, I don't know whether I'd have the same consistency on the topic, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I probably would care less about your feelings and the experience that you went through if you didn't wow me with your theological prowess. This is very rare and something I value a lot. I gained a lot of respect for you tonight. Although the first time I met you, your honesty really got me. But just the weird niche shit that I thought I was the only person that like really cared about. Definitely
fun. I think my favorite description of me was Kid Not Kin the other night described me as violently good faith. He was like, it's one of the things that I both like about you and hate about you. I'm like, yeah, violently good faith is probably a fair assessment.
But Yamato and Beckett and YouTube, Twitch chat, and your chat, thank you guys very much. I'm gonna get going and spend a little bit of time with them before I pass it. I've been up for like an ungodly amount of time.
That's understandable. Have a good night. It's been a pleasure. I'm also going to dip from the call. And I will catch people on the other side. We'll do another theology talk at some point. We'll actually set up the topic. That'll be fun.
I would love that.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Oh, and just before I go, I'm talking to Portland is Burning about free speech tomorrow. He's the first person I've seen say anything in the ballpark of like anti-free speech, and the exact quote was "fuck your free speech." So
yeah, I saw him tweet that. So yeah, that should be fun.
That was his second iteration that you saw, I think, because this was a while ago, and then he did it today, and then said, "Especially yours, Elder Drazi." So So that should be a really interesting conversation.
So
Should we
I
go?
mean, before we all go, right? Do you think my position, right, is like crazy for wanting to like stomp out disinformation? Because like I understand it's harder said than done, right?
I don't blame you for
But
thinking it, but it's a
right.
little scary to hear you say it.
Ugh,
Ooh, ooh.
oof. Okay.
No, I think I
'Cause
think
I
it's an unachievable. I think it's an unachievable standard.
But I've said some
Okay.
wild ass shit in the throes of like lockdowns and shit too. So I was like, "Fuck
No,
all
it's
these
fine.
people. We should hold them down and give them the vaccine." I don't think that. That's very emotional.
My favorite meme was like get a bunch of boys, get a fucking jeep and just start bagging and tagging them with the fucking vaccine.
Jesus fucking Christ. Right, okay, I'm dipping. Have a lovely evening, all.
All right, see y'all.
Peace out, you
All
guys. Good night. And same for you guys. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad everybody seemed to really like our side tangent about theology. I loved it. Elkenstein, thanks. You've been a really cool person in chat, and it's been really cool to have you in the Discord. Oh yeah, I'll share my Discord link again before I go in case we have anybody else. Also, since you're already here, you guys are more than welcome to like the stream. You know, if you feel like it. If you can make the effort to move your wrist a little bit over that like button, give it a little click. That'd be really cool. My understanding is that YouTube's pretty good with like discoverability stuff. So when it comes to streams, more than pre-recorded videos. And also, I have Mr. Girl video that I did with Key of Weird a while ago. It just like YouTube like blocked it, so I just fixed it today. There's like a part 1 and part 2 of it. It was over the Nick Fuentes stuff. So that's on my YouTube now as well.